Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for an extraordinary episode of the Show Up Dad. We have a very special guest joining us today, none other than Jessica Tapia. But before we dive into today's captivating conversation, let's take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude to our generous sponsors. This episode of the Show Up Dad is made possible by the unwavering support of Tall Man Equipment. As a leading provider of top-notch tools and equipment for the powerline industry, Tall Man Equipment is committed to helping professionals like you excel in your work. Discover their extensive range of high-quality products and unleash your full potential by visiting tallmanequipment.com. In addition, we'd like to extend a special shout-out to the Show Up Dad Foundation. This remarkable organization is dedicated to empowering fathers on their journey towards becoming the best versions of themselves. The Show Up Dad Foundation wholeheartedly believes in the transformative power of fatherhood and strives to support and uplift dads in their mission to show up, be present, and make a positive impact on their children's lives. To learn more about their inspiring mission and how you can get involved, visit the showupdadfoundation.org. Now let's turn our attention back to our extraordinary guest, Jessica Tapia, who is not only a devoted Christ follower, but also a loving wife to her high school sweetheart and a dedicated mother of three. She has an impressive educational background with a bachelor's degree in kinesiology, I hope I said that correct, and a single subject teaching credential in physical education. On top of that, she holds a master's degree in education, showcasing her commitment to academic excellence. For 6 years, Jessica passionately served as a middle and high school physical education teacher, pouring her heart into shaping young minds. However, her journey took an unexpected turn this past year when she found herself at the center of a controversial situation. Today, Jessica joins us on the Show Up Dad to share her powerful insights on what is happening within our education systems. Get ready to be inspired and challenged as Jessica sheds light on the pressing issues and encourages us all to stand firm in our convictions. So without further ado, let's welcome Jessica Tapia to the show. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'd like to start off with you just providing an account of what happened and the sequence of events that ultimately led to your wrongful termination, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's quite the story. When people hear why I was fired, which essentially was for refusing to come to the strict placed on me, immediately, their thoughts go to, oh, she probably had a transgender student that she wasn't referring to by his or her, preferred pronouns, or, maybe shared this information with parents because here in California, teachers are actually given guidance to not do that. They're given guidance to withhold those preferred pronouns and those gender preferences from parents in the case they might not know.
Yeah.
And so again, people kind of think maybe I was in that sort of situation, which led to the directives being placed on me and me then saying I won't comply. But that is not what happened. I actually never, to my knowledge, had a transgender student in any of my classes. What
Mhm.
happened was students found me on social media. And on social media, I am very clear and loud and bold about my Christian conservative beliefs. And I had started really speaking into things that were happening in the culture and in society, and just sharing again my opinions on them, from a Christian conservative standpoint. So when students decided to look me up, I had no idea what they were looking for, but what they found initially was a video that I had recorded in Kohl's. I walked in one day to do a little bit of shopping, and I was just felt bombarded by all the Pride clothing that I walked in and saw. But that
Yeah.
day, I learned that they're making this stuff now for toddlers and babies,
Hmm.
literally onesies with, Pride on it, and clothes for 2T, 3T. And this is how old my little ones are. And I'm just like blown away. A child can't even wrap their mind around what this pride concept is that our culture has created, and
Yeah.
it's so sad that they would even have to try, because when we look at this rainbow flag and what pride is, it's all about sexuality. It's all about who one really prefers to have sex with. So why does a child need to have any concern about that?
Right.
Anyways, I just kind of posted a video sharing my thoughts on this clothing I was viewing, and students found it. And as 14, 15, 16-year olds, they don't have fully developed brains, and they're very, very swayed by the current culture. So they viewed it as me being hateful and disrespectful towards
Yeah.
that community. Again, when I'm just sharing my thoughts and my beliefs on what I'm seeing in the store that day. So that led them to go on a hunt on my page. They actually
Yeah.
went to my Jesus highlight and they screenshot 7 or 8 posts on my Jesus highlight, scriptures, just biblical quotes from some people in the faith that I really enjoy following, where people have great encouragement to me in the faith, and submitted all these things to my school district. My district immediately the next day just plucked me right away from my students. I was walked up to the office, put in a room where the assistant superintendent was waiting, and he said, "There is something that's been brought to our attention via your social media. We need to place you on paid administrative leave while we investigate." And he apologized repeatedly to me because this man knows who I am, knows that I have a great rapport as a teacher, even as a student that went to this school district. And, this was very, very bizarre, very out of line what was happening. I think we were all, taken back and confused by it. But I was placed on leave and they investigated through the summer. So
Hmm.
this was, gosh, my time is, it's such a blur for me all now, time wise, since I've, not been working. But this
Yeah.
was almost 2 years ago now that this all began. So summer goes by, and I really thought they were going to let it just blow over during summer, and I would just be back to return to work. And I
Hmm.
hadn't heard anything. Summer was coming to an end, so I reached out and asked, like, "Hey, am I okay to come back for the new school year?" And the district responded and said, "No, we've been investigating like we said we would, and now we need your side of the story." And I'm
Hmm.
thinking, of the story, like, there's not really a story. Like, students just decided to look me up on social media, which my page isn't like, "Hey, I'm a teacher," like, there's no affiliation. This is my personal page, and I'm choosing to do, with it what I would like outside of work. There's, total separation there. So it's just so crazy to see what's happening. Like, I'm feeling, my rights really being infringed upon. And so I'm like, okay, I'll come into this meeting and share whatever it is that needs to be shared. And so go into this first meeting, and I was totally taken back. I had a packet of papers set in front of me with allegations, 12
Hmm.
allegations. And I am like shaking. I have always been someone, like, since I was a child, that has always tried to, like, do the right thing, follow the
Yeah.
rules, right? Like, go by the playbook. Um, I've always been a straight A student, like, was never someone that was like grounded or any of that. And so this is just beyond me to even have one allegation made against me, more or less
Yeah.
12. And so they set that in front of me and say, you know, read through those. We're going to leave the room for a minute while you go through those. We're going to come back in and you're going to respond to all of them. And I'm like, okay. And they leave the room. I'm sitting there with my 2 union reps, and we start reading through these allegations. And after reading the first or second one, it just kind of clicked what was happening. I almost got a little bit of peace come over me, which was good because I was truly just in turmoil. But as I read through them, I realized exactly what happened. Students had, again, found my Christian conservative beliefs, and then they used those to craft allegations about how I was doing my job. So, some outlandish things. One of the ones that always comes to mind is there was an allegation that I broadcast sermons to my students.
Hmm.
Even my union reps were like, "What? Does she roll out loudspeakers like and have her class sit down and listen to Sunday sermon?" No, of course she doesn't. And so I do. I respond to all of these allegations, and I tell my district like where I'm kind of thinking these were somewhat founded upon. And so I said, as a PE teacher, on Mondays, I used to call it Monday Run Day. We would go down to the track. I would give them some sort of activity, whether it was 2 laps with the stairs, with bleachers involved, or a timed mile, whatever it was. It was the day I would let my students. It was the day I would let my students listen to a podcast or music of their choosing, so they could focus on their run. If not, they are chatting and wanting to sit down and not do anything. So, but I would always walk around with them, observe them, and listen to something coming quietly from my phone loud enough for me to hear. And it was worship or maybe a podcast of my choosing. So I told my district, if a student walked by me, they would have heard what was coming from my phone, which was maybe a worship song or whatever podcast that I was listening to that day.
Yeah.
I can't have headphones in like they do. I'm still being observant and listening out for them. So anyways, I respond to all of these allegations. There was another one that I was not calling students by their preferred pronoun. Again, I had never had a student come up to me and say, Mrs. Tapia, I know that your roll call sheets from the school, from the district, say female and Sarah, but today I would like to be, or from here on out, I would like to be referred to as a male and Sean. Like, that situation had never happened to me,
Yeah.
but yet an allegation is being made that I'm not going along with students' gender identity. So several different allegations like that. I respond to all of them, and I get placed back on leave while they decide what to do next. And so next meeting comes around. I had 3 meetings in total through this, and it was about a 7 to 8 month process from when I was plucked out of school, away from my students, never to return, to the day I was terminated. So meeting number 2, I go in for, and they had decided I was just barely going to be allowed to come back to work. What I had done was so wrong and so serious. And again, I've shared this in other interviews and podcasts, and they go, remind me again, what is it you did? And
what is it you did?
I posted on my personal social media, and I used my freedom of speech, and I used my religious liberty, and I was just being me, the same teacher I've always been, for the 6 years that I've been a teacher at that district. The one thing that changed, the one thing was that some students decided to find me on social media and just really dig and go on a hunt and get to know more about me. Obviously things about me that are not made clear in a classroom because, I'm not going to be out there, with my politics, and I'm not there to do that. So anyways, meeting number 2, they right away let me know, like, we're just barely allowing you to come back to work, but now with a plan of assistance and directives. And I'm thinking, like, since when have I needed help as a teacher? Like, why all of a sudden do I need a plan of assistance? And why all of a sudden do I have me, like, I'm singled out as a teacher with these sets of directives that I have to, like, follow to a T, or my job is gone, is what they made it seem like. And so I'm just, really feeling like, wow, in the blink of an eye, it's like I went from this respected teacher to this. I felt like they were all looking at me like this awful person.
Yeah.
All because what? Because my, again, Christian conservative views had been made very clear, through the finding of my social media, and they weren't lining up with, what the education system has to say or think about things such as, transgender students, and how we should handle a situation where a student is, confused about their gender identity, or wanting to go by something that they, were not born as, and how to handle that with parents. You would think and hope that the school system would be very much a team with parents. I mean, going to school to become a teacher, that's what I was taught. I was taught the triangle, which is the student on top, the teachers, administration, and the parents, and we work, connected and together at all times. But it's like, this is like the exception when it comes to if a student, is has confusion, really is what it is, about who they are or what gender
Yeah.
they are and they're wanting to be referred by. So um, I lost my train of thought.
It almost seems to me, Jessica, like after just hearing your story, that they were very reactive. And I know that in a lot of different places that I worked at and seen, people are more reactive than responsive, right? And they didn't know how to react to this new situation at all. And obviously, I feel, this is my personal belief, and I'm sure there's people out there that believe just like I do. Their response to this, their reaction to this was unjust. I mean, they took the side of children without knowing the whole picture, without seeing the whole picture. You know what I mean? It's like they're like, okay, this happened and this is how we're going to respond. We got to show people that we're responding this way, we're reacting this way. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know, it's just
You're
crazy
spot
the way they
on.
did it.
That's truly, just in the short time that I was a teacher, truly
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest shifts I saw take place was the thought and opinion and feelings of students are
Mm-hmm.
like just what override it. Not
Yeah.
the thought and opinion and feelings of teachers, not the thoughts and opinions and feelings of parents or even administrators half the time. It's like everything revolves around the child. And to a degree, I mean, I believe that's how it should be, because that's what we're all there for, to educate the children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to, give them, a bright and positive future and help them, find who they are and their calling and their purpose and what they're going to do with their life. But
Mm-hmm.
it's begun. It's almost like just gone too far and too much,
Yeah.
to the point where it's just like anything goes with what the child says or feels. And it's like, no, there's lines drawn that, like, we need to hold the line here at this point. I understand when you hear a child say, like, something that one of the students submitted is, now I feel disrespected by Mrs. Tapia. And it's like
Yeah.
the district heard that, and it's just like they were like, oh, okay, she must be an awful teacher. We've got to do something about her. And it's just like,
Yeah.
so a student can literally nowadays just come and say anything, anything,
Yeah. That's
and
scary.
it's true, and we're gonna react based on that. Like, going through this, I really got to see how feelings today are overriding fact.
Mm.
And so much of my story too is whether or not these transgender rights, and I call them special rights because I believe it's a special right for an individual who is biologically um, male to all of a sudden, think that they're female and get to now live in society as one, go
Mm-hmm.
into locker rooms and, have people go along with that. Like, that's a special right for everyone to just bow down to your delusion. Um,
Yeah.
and it's a special right for, just in that situation where you're having this gender identity confusion, for that bit of information and only that bit of information to be kept from your parents. So, well, then why can't I keep from your parents that you're failing my class? Or should I also
Mm.
keep from your parents that you were smoking weed? Should I also keep from your parents that you got in a fight? Like, no, the school requires that we share everything except
Yeah.
that. So it's like, again, we need to be asking these questions. Why is this the exception?
Mm-hmm.
And really just sounding the alarm on that. And so, anyways, going back to, just to finish up the timeline of everything, my second meeting, yeah, I learned that they were going to allow me to come back just barely, but I had to follow these directives. And so I'll give those to you really quick, and then kind of tell you where I went from there. So the first one, that I just immediately felt convicted by, was I learned I've had to refer to students by their, preferred pronoun, new gender identity.
Yeah.
And again, I never had that situation, but I'm sitting there in that moment, like, trying to imagine that, you know what I mean? Like, a
Mm-hmm.
student of mine that I clearly know, like, what their gender is, And I'm playing that out where if now they were wanting to be the opposite, that I would have to go along with it, and just like imagining how that would feel. And I knew like that wouldn't be me, and that would be lying, and that would be totally against my faith and my beliefs. And it just got worse. The next thing that came up, which wasn't written at the time, and I found that really interesting, but the district vocally said, oh, also you would have to withhold that from your kids, like your new pronoun preference. And I was like, hold on. And I looked my assistant superintendent dead in the eye and I said, are you asking me to lie to parents? And they like kind of paused for a second, because they didn't like that I said lie.
Yeah.
But they were like, yeah, for student safety and privacy. Because everything to them is wrapped around just this idea that if a student is transgender or wanting to change their gender, that if parents were to find out, that they would be totally unsupportive and abuse them. Like that is what the district is completely riding on, which is, I'm not going to say has never happened, but it's such a small percentage. And still we have protocols in place that if we were to find out or have any inkling that a student was being abused, we are mandated reporters, and we would take that from there and have that handled. But that doesn't mean that if that could happen, that we keep information from that child's parents. And so again, it's why are we making this the exception to the rule? So next directive was that I was to refrain from there on out from speaking to students about God or the Bible. That was another allegation, was that I just went around doing that. And I told my district, students are smart and they know, what teachers they can talk to about what. They get a good feel for who their teachers are. And so, yes, I've had a lot of students come to me with questions about God or about the Bible, or just very innocent, like, what church do you go to? Or what's your favorite Bible verse? Or, what worship song was that? I love that. Very innocent. And so, and I let my district know, like I gave them all the truth that there was to this, but they were like, no more from here on out. Like, even if they ask you a question, you tell them it's not the time or place. And I'm like, that hurt, that hurt me to imagine and think of, because, I was a young girl that came from a very broken home, no father. My mom was a drug addict, and praise the Lord, I had an angel of a grandma who rescued me out of a broken home of abuse and drugs. And she showed me who Jesus was and gave me great foundations. But there's a lot of students, even in my classes that I've had over the years, who had were going through a very similar childhood as mine, but maybe didn't have that angel in their life like I had with my grandma. So I'm like, I could be the only one, to give them some hope. And my school district is now telling me, nope, zip it, no more. And I'm like, something like this is just not feeling right,
Yeah.
And at that time, really interesting, as I'm getting a feel for these directives, how they're wanting me to return to work and behave, I actually asked them, and this is the assistant superintendent, the school district's lawyer, my principal, and then like a secretary in the room. I asked them, I go, so say, a student is transgender, say male transitioning to female, am I going to need to let them in my locker room? Like, you do realize I'm kind of in a special situation here. I'm a PE teacher. I'm not just like a classroom teacher. I oversee a locker room. And their lawyer actually said in that second meeting, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And I'm like, oh, so we don't even know. We're just making this up as we go? Like, no, I need to know. I need to know very clearly your expectations of me, And they seem to have everything else figured out. But I presented them with that. And at that time, they just said, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So after that meeting and being presented with those various directives really, which all came down to lying to students about who they are, lying to their parents about what's going on in their child's life, and then, not being able to answer a child's question in an educational manner, not proselytizing about God or the Bible. I was a wreck. I,
Yeah.
I cried all the way home after that meeting, and I just did not know what was going on. I mean, the Lord had definitely made it clear I had entered some serious spiritual warfare. Um,
Yeah.
but there was just so much just deception that played into it, which we of course know is like what the devil wants. And so I just knew like there's so much emotions that I was feeling, so much deception around these directives and expectations. Like I just need time to work through this, figure out what I'm going to do next. And my mom actually said you should go off on stress leave, and I'm like, okay, like that's a great idea. I need time, and so I did that actually for 3 months, where I just was praying and seeking counsel and talking to pastors and, getting advice, from other Christians in my life. Like, what do I do? Because really, I had three options: put
Mhm.
my head in the sand and go along with these directives, even though I was convicted by them, just to save my salary. Number two, resign, just walk away, because I'm now seeing that apparently I can't be both a Christian, like practicing Christian, and public school teacher, or
Yeah.
just speak up, right? I'm being presented with something that's clearly evil and clearly not good or right or true for my students, for myself,
Mhm.
for their parents. So I could just speak up. But again, going through all this, that it was a hard decision to make, and it wasn't very clear to me what to do right away. And I'm so
Yeah.
grateful that I did take time, take time to figure it out. But I will say that time was intense, because the devil knew I was going to make a big decision. Whatever it was that I made was a really big decision. And he, of course, didn't want me to make the one that I did end up making. But at the end of my stress leave, God made it clear that I was to just, I mean, Ephesians 5:11, right? To
Mhm.
expose what is evil and to
Yeah.
no part in it. So that's what I did. I emailed my school district and I just said, my stress leave is over. They knew that I was on stress leave and that I was very, very much in turmoil about what all I had just been through with being
Yeah.
reported and investigated, and now, being treated like I'm this bad teacher. Something else is when and if I were to return to work, I was going to be watched closely for 45 days. And so I email my district saying my stress leave's over. I'm ready to come back to work, do, the best job for my students as I've always done. But I just need you to know now there's a few things that I cannot comply with. And so I laid them out for them, A, B, C. These are the
Mhm.
directives you gave me, and here's why it would be against my faith and beliefs if I were to do what you're asking me to do. And
Wow.
so at this point, this is uh, not this past December, but the December before that, so December 2022, and
Mhm.
email them that, and they get back to me in January after winter break, and they say, okay, it sounds like you're asking for a religious accommodation meeting, so we're going to have you come in for a third meeting, and we're going to see if and how we can accommodate your religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm thinking a couple things like, okay, I mean, I would obviously love for my religious beliefs to be accommodated. This is America, and that is what we're supposed to do, right? And we have
Yeah.
religious liberty, and that's what our country is founded upon. But also, how is that going to work? Like, if they were to accommodate me, would I be the only teacher walking around this high school campus that doesn't have to, play this pronoun game, and doesn't have to lie to parents, and, doesn't have to let boys in the girls' locker room? Like, it was just obviously, like I said, I wanted to be accommodated, but I'm already thinking, like, how could that even work? You know?
Yeah.
But of course, I go in hopeful, and it was an intense meeting. It was an experience I've never had before because essentially it was all me being questioned about my faith. And it was
Mm-hmm.
so bizarre because if I were to make an assumption, I'm sitting across from a table of people who, again, I would assume are not Christians like myself.
Yeah.
Sure don't seem to be lining up on things, but yet they are asking me all these questions about Christianity and my faith and how I practice and what it looks like in my life, almost for me to prove to them that I'm a legit Christian, which is like, how how do you prove that to someone who's not even a Christian, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I answer all their questions, like where do I go to church and what do I read and how often do I read it and what about my faith says that I can't do these things. And they painted out some different scenarios, like, okay, say you had a student who now wants to go by this name that their parents don't know, but this and that, and just like these really crazy confusing scenarios that I was trying to keep up with. And then they
Mm-hmm.
wanted, me to respond how I would, handle that situation. And it
Yeah.
very much felt like they were trying to get me to change up what I had clearly already told them no to. No,
Mm.
it's like they were
Yeah.
just trying so hard to get me to say even like a maybe. Oh, maybe I would do this. Or yeah, I might in that case. But it's like,
Mm.
no. And that's where we are right now, where we have got to, and it says this in the word too, like let our yes be yes and let our no be no. Anything in
Yes.
between, I believe it says, is from the devil. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like, whoa, that scripture was like delivered to me after all this. And in the day I read it, I was like, oh my gosh. Um, but at the end of that religious accommodation meeting, they had one more question for me, and they said, is there anything else we need to know about that you can't do in your position because of your faith? And I was like, yeah, I'm in a unique position. Again, I'm a PE teacher. I oversee a female locker room. So I'll have you know now, I won't be allowing boys into my girls' locker room. And they kind of like sat back and were like, we have a whole other issue then because you have to. If you have a student identifying as a female now, you'd have to let them in. And
Mm.
again, it's like we could have a whole conversation about what is, well, you can you identify to me what identifying as a female now looks like? Like, how do
Mm-hmm.
I identify that this person is actually identifying as a female now, right? Like,
Yeah.
could it just be any boy walking up to my locker room door with just a skirt thrown around their waist? Like, I mean, what is your protocol here? What are the, like,
Yeah.
and it's just, this is what happens. This is the muddy water that we
Mm-hmm.
enter into when you start crossing the line like this, a
Mm-hmm.
line that should not be crossed. It's just going to be a mess from here on out if we try to play this game.
Yeah.
So I said no. Like, I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to involve myself in it. There's no way. And so that ended. That was my third and final meeting, my religious accommodation meeting. And a week later, they emailed me another packet and basically explained why there's no accommodation that could work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very end, in bold writing, they said, we cannot accommodate your religious beliefs. Therefore, we're releasing you from employment official January 31st of 2023. And I remember like exactly when and where I was when I read that. And
Mm-hmm.
um, gosh, it was so surreal.
Yeah.
Um, but again, as we talked about earlier, like the Lord has a way of prepping us right for what we're about to go through. And
Yeah.
honestly, a week before, a week or two before I was fired, I was really sensing that that's what was coming. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember just like pausing in my driveway one day and praying and just being like, God, like, if I am really fired for literally just like for the truth, standing for truth, it's plain and simple. Like, that is what I'm doing here. Holding the line that you've drawn, God. Um,
Yeah.
you take this story far and wide. Like, if that's what's going to come. And me and my husband laugh now because that's exactly what he did. He was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll do that. And he's definitely done that. I've been, busy sharing it. And it's so crazy too, because I never, would have imagined myself. Like, I've always actually been a shy person. People don't believe that now because I've just been like talking all of last year and
Yeah.
still happening this year. But I really have always been like a shy, quiet person. I would never like go on a stage and talk in front of people, and that's like what I'm doing now. And it's
Hmm.
so crazy. And what's even crazier is um, I had a phone call before I was fired with a couple in Washington, and I had gotten really close to the wife on social media, and she was kind of walking through this whole investigation with me and praying for me. And her and her husband wanted to pray with me, like on the phone one Sunday, right before I made that big decision to say no to those directives. They got on the phone with me. We talked for like 2 hours, and it was just like so spirit filled. I just really felt like the Lord was in the midst of it. And the husband, he, I mean, we had never even like seen each other or talked before. He just kind of joined in on the phone call because he did have like, some legal knowledge, and he knew like if I was fired that this was going to be grounds for a lawsuit.
Yeah.
But he just got on and he wanted to hear my story too, and pray with his wife over me. And at one point, as I'm sharing the story with him, like I have with you right now, he paused and he was like, Jessica, I don't even know what you look like, but as you're telling me the story, I'm like getting this vision of a woman on a stage, for getting me on a stage to talk in front of a bunch of people.
You're right.
And I've
Yeah.
so yeah, that is my story of being terminated.
Wow. Man, you definitely went through a lot of adversity there, Jessica, and I just want to commend you for your courage. That's something that is needed more and more today, right? Is the courage that God gave you to be able to stand up for what is right. Um, Super awesome story, man. How has each and every one of these experiences that you went through shaped your perspective on the importance of parental involvement in education? What have you seen now?
Oh my God. My heart is so just like parents. I just want to just grab, every parent and be like, take back your children, take them back.
Mm,
I think we don't realize in so many senses that we've kind of just turned our kids over to whatever it is, right? Turn them over to social media, turn them over to the pediatricians, turn them over to the teachers. And we're all thinking that we can trust all those things, right? Like,
mm,
oh, there's no way that, something's going to pop up on that phone that's going to be inappropriate for the children. Oh, there's no way that the pediatrician is going to, advise us in any way that would actually harm our child and not heal them. Oh, there's no way that a teacher would keep information from me about my own child. But it's like, no, like all of those things are happening. And
yeah.
so when I say that, like, I've just been like red pilled in every sense of like being a parent and really taking ownership of, you know, of my children and their education and their health and their well-being and their upbringing. Like, it is up to us as mothers and fathers. Like, all of that's our job, and we need to stop, turning it over to other people and other things and having this blind trust for the
Yes.
education system, even for the medical system. Like, I have a whole story there that we could get into. That'll have to be, I think we've actually talked a little bit about that
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
social media, and that can be for another episode. But yeah, that's just really my heart right now, is like, mothers and moms and dads, just take back your children. Take
Mm,
back your children. And I realize, like, not everyone, homeschooling's not for everyone. And there's no way I can ever convince everyone to do that. But
hmm.
that doesn't mean that parents can't get way more involved than they've probably been with their child's
Yes.
education, and get to know each and every one of their teachers, and get their butts to the school board meetings, and know, what kind of policies we should be fighting for and speaking up for, and not just
Hmm.
having the attitude of, oh, someone else will do it, someone else will take care of it. Like, we only have control over what we do. And
Yes.
and so we need to stop, having the attitude of, oh, I'm just one vote or I'm just one voice, and more of like, no, I am the vote, I am the voice. Imagine if
Yes.
we all had that attitude, like the impact we could have if we're like, no, 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 it is my voice. It is up to my voice. It is up to my vote. It is up to, whatever it is that I go and take a stand for. Like if we all could just have that attitude, we could turn this thing around, but
Mm.
it's only, a few doing that. But I do see the number greatly growing, and it's because courage is contagious. And
Yes.
so, I get so excited when I see another teacher, that's like, I'm going to die on this hill, because that's where I
Yeah.
was, where I was like, I'm going to die on this hill. Like God had to bring me to the place where, even though I was so stressed and freaked out about me losing my teaching salary, because we greatly relied on that, I thought we were going to lose our home. It is literally a miracle that I'm sitting here in our house right now. But that's our God, right? Like He
Yeah.
provides. And I stepped out in faith, and I kept walking in it. And He was just like, the whole time He's been like, I've got you, I've got you, I've got you. And truly, I've only gotten to experience His goodness and His provision and His faithfulness to me because I took a chance, right? I took a risk.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, so to say, I was willing to lose my life, which really then allowed me to find it, right? Just like it
Mm.
says in scripture. And
Yeah.
so, gosh, yeah, I could go on and on just about the work that the Lord has done, like in my life, in our family's life through this.
Yeah.
And it's still going on. I've sued my school district, and so I'm still in a lawsuit against them.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I can't speak too much on that.
Yeah. No.
It's touchy there, but I am, just in prayer and asking,
Mm-hmm.
anyone listening to pray along with me, just because there are so many teachers, and I know because I get the messages, there are so many teachers who are just mortified by what their career has become. I mean, I
Yeah.
will literally get messages of teachers walking out of a parent teacher conference where they had to like play this whole game, play this whole pretend game in front of the child's parents,
Wow.
and walk out of the meeting feeling like a total hypocrite, bawling and going, all I know is I can never do that again. That was so wrong, and I cannot do that again. And they're messaging me going, what
Mm.
do I do? And I'm like, take a stand for the truth.
Wow.
So all that to say, I'm praying hard that whatever does result from my lawsuit, I know that a lot of eyes across the nation are watching to see what
Mm-hmm.
happens. And so I'm just like, Lord, your will be done. But I pray that you send a message through whatever results, send a loud, strong, clear message to
Mm-hmm.
teachers that now is the time, to sound the alarm and to take a stand, and that, it'll be worth it, so to say. Um,
Yeah.
but I believe that even if it wasn't worth it, does that mean you don't take a stand for righteousness? No, like I think
No.
it's always worth it, period, to choose God and choose truth and choose righteousness and holiness. Um,
Mm.
so anyways.
No, that's so good. No, I agree with you. And I want to take it a step, even further, even with Christian schools.
Mhm.
Parents need to be aware. I don't know how many people I know that put their kids in Christian schools and believe that it somehow takes away their responsibility, that what we owe to our children to raise and train them up in the admonition of the Lord, right? Ephesians 4:6. They think that if they put them in Christian schools, they don't have to do that anymore. If they go to church, they don't have to do that anymore. And it's this lackadaisical approach that they're throwing on the educational system. You know what I mean? And that's another bad thing to do, unfortunately. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I think, parenting is not easy, and it's a
No.
lot, and it's 24/7. So, trust me, I know it and I feel it, where it's like it's very tempting to be a lazy parent. And I
Mm.
think that's lazy parenting where you go, oh, I'm just going to put my kids in a private Christian school and that's going to keep them safe from all the nonsense and also cover my base with like bringing them up in Christ. And it's like,
Yeah.
no. Actually, neither of those is true. Um, and one, really, it makes me sad because if there's one thing, right, like one thing that you as a mom or dad should be really investing in instilling and laying the foundations of for your child, I would like to think that you would want to be the one to teach them the word of God and teach them
Yeah.
how to have a relationship with Jesus, right? Because there are so many different doctrines out there. You don't
Mm.
actually know, what, how your child is taking in, Christianity and what it is that they're learning exactly. It's like, I don't know about anyone else, but I want all of that to come from me because
Mm-hmm.
just even seeing with like my journey of being like raised in the church and raised by my grandma, like looking back, I'm like, okay, there's some things that like I'm gonna do differently with my own kids, right? So that they have
Yeah.
better understanding than I did as a child and a better relationship with the Lord than I did as a child. Um, so yeah, I would say we have to be so careful with falling into lazy.
Absolutely. So, Jessica, in your opinion, what are some practical ways that fathers can actively participate in their children's education, especially in today's fast-paced, technology-driven world? Like, what do you suggest to fathers out there?
Yeah. We'll go ahead and start with the technology piece. And mind you, my kids are 2, 4, and 6. So,
Yeah.
we're really not in this place where it's like, our kids are walking around with like this cell phone all day like that. Oh, that just scares me. I don't ever want to be in that place where my kids have this free reign of this phone. But you know what?
Hmm.
There are some great and I wish I had the name of it. I'll have to send you the link for it. But there are some great resources out there to help us parent, right?
Yeah.
And especially like say parent a young teen who maybe you do want to have them to have a phone so you have that connection with them. When they go to a friend's house or go on an outing or whatever it is. But there's a specific phone that you can buy where it is like totally there's no social medias on it. Like it's
Yeah.
impossible for the phone to have any social medias. Um, so I know I, that's what I'm going to do when my kids
Yeah.
their first phone. We're going to have very, clear guidelines. Um, and so when it comes to parents who do have a child at the age of having a phone, I mean, I'm never going to advise them to just hand over like an Apple iPhone. It's funny too. I just had someone message me and say, isn't it interesting how it was, we say the apple, right, that caused Adam and Eve to sin. And look at now what's in, all of our hands,
Yeah.
right? This Apple
Apple.
phone. And we're thinking we can hand it to our 10, 11, 12, 13 year old and it's not going to cause any harm. Like, no, it is going to expose them to so much. It is going to just, you know, completely change them and put them in danger and harm's way. It really is.
Mhm.
I mean, again, unless you are like so on top of it. And so really I'm just never gonna advise parents to hand their kids over
Yeah.
like a typical phone. I suggest that again there is a phone that is safe. And I'll get you the link for that. I need to remember what the name of it is. But a friend of mine with an older child, that's what she gave hers. But that's for older children. I'm not there yet. But when it
Yeah.
comes to just, dads in general, like, I think of my own husband and our 2, 4, and 6 year old. And, it can be hard because, like, he just got home. It's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. Like, he's missed dinner. He gets home right when it's like, shower and bedtime. And he's gone early in the morning. And that's like 4 days of the week for him. So he goes
Yeah.
through a lot of the week, like, just feeling like, he's not there, he's not present, and he's missing out on a lot, and that's hard on him as a dad. And it's hard on us too, because, we miss him and we want him here and being a part of things. But, it's also just life and we need a provider and he's in his role doing that, and I'm here in the home, doing what I
Mhm.
believe God has called moms to do. And so, the time that we do get with him when he comes home, it's, something we talk about is that time has got to be so intentional, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's so small each day in the evening that he gets until, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which is awesome. He's home with us.
Mhm.
But, we make sure to read with them. We make sure to pray with them before going to bed and just, give them lots of love and, physical intimacy, and just, again, in that short time they're seeing dad, and it's just so special for
Yeah.
both of them. And they're so excited when he walks in the door, and that makes them feel great to see him coming home, and they know we pray for him to come home, and
Yeah.
he's excited to have them run up to him as he's walking through the door. And again, even if the time is short, because again, most fathers, that is kind of their schedule. They've gone a lot. I would say with that little bit of time, make
Mhm.
it intentional.
How do you encourage him as a wife? You know what I mean? And you see that your husband's exhausted and all that. How is a wife? What kind of advice can you give to the wives that are listening for them to inspire and encourage their husbands to be intentional? Right?
Yeah, I would say just really speaking into them, and reminding them of how important it is, for them to be, to be the father they are to their children. Like, just
Mm-hmm.
reminding them, like, I can't just do it myself as a mother. Like, they need your specific and special kind of love, right? Like, he's the one that's wrestling them on the ground. He's the one that's playing dodgeball with them in the house, and like
Mm-hmm.
picture frames are flying off the wall. Like, I don't do that, kind of stuff. Like, he's the fun,
Yeah.
playful, and wrestling. Like, we both provide such a unique and different type of love, and even discipline, right? Like, even our discipline looks different. I mean, we have the same kind of foundation and agreement on how to do it, but it
Mm-hmm.
comes off very differently when it's coming from me or coming from him. And sometimes it's like, no, they need to hear from dad right now that, like, that was not okay, and that's not how we do things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I would say as a wife, just making sure that the husband, the father, always knows, like, his very unique and important role, and how much he is needed,
Mm-hmm.
for his children, and even just for you as a wife. Like, we're a partnership, we're a team in this. We're two that have become one, and are now raising up these children, and that's our biggest
Yeah.
responsibility and job over our actual job. Is, what kind of humans are we producing? Like,
Great.
what kind
Yeah.
of people are we, bringing up to, you know, add to society here? And, I want to, at the end of the day, see my kids as adults and having their own family, and be like, okay, like, we did it. Like, we were intentional, and it was hard work, and sometimes it was not fun, right? Because disciplining is not fun. Um, but, like, look at what came from that,
Yeah.
and I just, again, like, I didn't see any of that as a child growing up. Like, I didn't see how a mom and dad, or a husband and wife, like, function, or
Mm-hmm.
work together to raise kids. Like, this is all new for me. The first time I really, really, like, got to see, actually, like, a healthy, mother and father and husband and wife, was actually when I started dating my husband in high school at
Mm.
16 and 17 years old. And I actually only started dating him because I was going to his mom's Bible study at his house. And she did
Wow.
a Bible study for high school girls. And she became kind of like really like a mom for me, so to say, because again, I'm being raised by my grandma while my mom is still, has fallen prey to drug addiction during that time. And so she
Yeah.
became really like a mom figure in my life. And then I'm like going to her house and seeing her, how she is with her children, how she is with her husband, how her husband treats her. And I'm just like in awe, like in total awe. Just, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. God fearing people, Christian family, just, doing their best to raise up good children. And now looking back, so my husband comes from, there's three. He's the middle child, but he has an older sister and a younger brother, and they are all happily married to other believers, and all of us have kids. We're all giving his parents, grandchild after grandchild, and it's just so beautiful to see, like, that is the work that his parents put into, raising these kids well. And of course, they had their own issues, right? Like, they weren't
Yeah.
perfect in their marriage and in their parenting. They had a season where my husband's dad, had to fight really an alcohol addiction. That was like a really big burden for a period, but they fought that, like they got through that.
Yeah.
And anyways, it's so cool to see, like, the power of all the prayers that I know that my husband's mom prayed over her children, and all, the work she put into, like, having these Bible studies available for her kids, and not even just for her kids, like, she had these, and then her kids are bringing their friends from school, from swim team, from water polo team, like, to their house, one
Yeah.
evening a week to sit down and be part of the Bible study. Like, so I truly believe that, if we're putting in the work as parents, to raise our children up in the way they should go, which is what we're commanded to do, like, we're going to
Yeah.
see the fruits of that.
No, I can't agree with you more. That's what we do with our foundation. We're a part of FDM Ministries, which is a great resource for families. We utilize it. Me and my wife are both pastors for Pastor Craig Castor. And that's what we use to disciple men and women in parenting and even in marriage, you know what I mean? Because for far too long, we've always said that, hey, we didn't have a blueprint, yada, yada. I had to recant on that because we do. It's called the Bible, and you just got to know how to look. What does the Bible say? I'm there. Knock, you know what I mean? Knocking, you shall seek, seeking you shall find, you know what I mean? And that's what we need to do, is we need to seek and find it through his word, and it's there laid before us. Everything we need to do to be successful, right?
Absolutely.
But Jessica, I wanted to just go ahead and end here. Thank you so much for your time and for your wonderful story. You know what I mean? I know this is going to reach our listeners out there, what's actually going on in our school system. Once again, I just want to commend you on your bravery. That's something that's much needed. And I like what you said. Courage is it's caught, right? It's contagious. And that's what we need to see more for both men and women out there.
Yeah.
So once again, thank you for coming on our broadcast. If you could just share with our listeners how they can get a hold of you, that'd be great. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm most active on my Instagram. My name there on Instagram is I'm Jessica Tapia. So it's I-M Jessica Tapia spelled out. That's my Instagram. On Facebook, you can find me, Jessica Shayna Tapia. On X, I really never go on it. It's kind of a backup thing for me, but I'm at Real Jess Tapia on X or Twitter. So yeah, either of those, I would love to connect. Thank you so much for having me on and for what you and your wife are doing. Truly always get really, really excited when I come across pages like yours, men doing what you're doing, where you're really pouring into other men, because I feel like women do that more. Like, we're always, providing all these different ways to amp each other up as women, but it's like, no, like, we need the men to be on fire too right now.
Yes.
So I get really excited when I see pages like yours, and men need that support just as much as women do. But the thing is, women, like, we have no problem going out and, like, finding it and just putting ourselves in these groups, and men are a little bit more timid about that. So
Yeah.
men, like, how each other work, and you got to figure out how to, like, band together right now. And so I love seeing guys figuring that out and just bringing in men and discipling. And so thank you too.
Well, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Sounds good.